Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. We should all have in front of us this page that reads at the top, Refuah Hitbonenut, healing and meditation. Right, in this diagram, which will be the base, the anchor of our study right now this afternoon. So the format is arranged in such a way that we have here 3 by 3, or 3 basic concepts, each one of which itself possesses within it 3 divisions or 3 stages. And the basic conceptual concept here is that of the Baal Shem Tov, that in every divine service or every meditation, every mitzvah that a Jew performs, he should psychologically proceed through a 3-stage process which is called Hachna'ah, Havdalah, Hamtaka. Submission, separation, sweetening. It's as though there's a continual cycle, a spiritual experience of the soul, that a person is always lowering himself, and then there takes place at a certain moment a separation between positive and negative forces in the soul, between good and evil, and ultimately the soul becomes so full of the light of the good that that light is able to shine and transform what was previously under the domain of the evil, to transform it back into good. The advantage of light that proceeds and comes out is as though metamorphosized from evil. This is called, once more, the terms. I don't know how many of us are fluent enough in the Hebrew to be able to read and understand the terms. Therefore, we will try to translate every single word here on the chart. So the first set of terms, which is the basis of all, is Hachna'ah. Once more, I'm now reading from the chart. At the top of the chart, we have the 2 words Refuah and Hitbonenut. Refuah is healing, and Hitbonenut is meditation. Then we have here 3 groups of 3. That on the right, we read Hachna'ah. Hachna'ah is submission, and then below Havdalah, which means separation, and then below that, finally, at the bottom here is actually the highest level, Hamtaka, which means sweetening. Probably the most important source for this series, this cycle of concepts, is the very first day of creation as related in the Torah. That we find that at the beginning, the darkness and the light were not yet separated one from the other. In the terminology of the sages, or v'choshech mishtamshim b'erbuvia, that light and darkness were intermixed together. And so long as they were intermixed together, everything was dim and not well defined. And then it says, Vayar Elokim et ha'or ki tov, that God saw the light to be good. Vayavdel Elokim ben ha'or u'ben ha'choshech. And then God separated between the light and the evil, and the darkness. He saw that the light was good, and separated between the light and the darkness. But then, finally, in the last verse of the first day of creation, it says that God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and it was evening and morning one day. Which means that it all came together, it all united, and became one day. Because previously there was day and night, and now there was evening and morning one day. All of that time period, all of the 24-hour time period, which was previously divided into 2 domains, a domain of darkness, a domain of light, all now became consolidated as one single day. Yom Echad, that's the conclusion, the last phrase of the first day of creation. Once more, that one day at the end, that represents sweetening. That the darkness of the night itself has become part of the day of the light, has become transformed into light itself. It's just one phase of a whole process which totally is light, which is daytime. Yom Echad, that's why even in the English language, the word day can either mean the daytime per se, or it can mean the whole 24-hour period, which is all one single day. So in that first initial stage, that the light and the darkness are together and intermingled and indistinguishable one from the other, the service of the soul, in order to begin the separation process, to identify the good from the evil, the light from the darkness, must lower itself. Once more, submission is necessary. Submission, which is the lowering of the ego, or the putting down of self, is the first most necessary thing in order to begin to identify what is here the light and what is the darkness. Because to be intermingled means that you don't even know which is which. As the prophet Isaiah says, that you think that the light is dark and you think that the dark is light. You're even mistaken as to the basic identification of what is light, what is good, and what is evil. You taste the bitter sweet and the sweet bitter. He says when a person is ill, we're talking here about healing. Isaiah says that the first sign of illness is that a person mistaken identification, what is the light, what is the darkness, what is the sweet, what is the bitter. So in that first initial state, which is the illness itself, the service of the soul is to lower itself. Now, another paradigm for these three stages that the Baal Shem Tov himself teaches is that these are what are called, referred to in the writings of the Arizal, the greatest of the Mekubalim, after Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who lived over 400 years ago in Tzfat. A secret which is called Chashmalmal. The most mysterious concept and word that appears in the first chapter of Ezekiel, which is called Maaseh Merkava, the workings of the chariot, which are the deepest secrets of the Torah. Whereas the first chapter of creation is called Maaseh Breshit. But even deeper than that is the first chapter in the book of Ezekiel, which describes the divine chariot, that we'll speak more about in the continuation. Maaseh Merkava. In that account of the chariot, there is one word which appears only in that context in the whole Bible, never appears again, which is the key mystery of the whole account. And that word is chashmal, the word which is nowadays in modern Hebrew used for electricity. Chashmal. But the sages already teach that this word is a compound. It has two elements to it, two sides to it, chash and mal, which means silence and speech. Silence and speech are like concealment and revelation. There's two opposites. It means that in one word, there is a paradox of two opposite states of being, which are contained simultaneously in one word, chash, mal. Now the Arizal, and especially the Baal Shem Tov, teaches that whenever there's a paradox, whereas the essence of the mysteries of the Torah are always based upon paradoxes. The difference between the revealed part of the legalistic part of the Torah and the Kabbalah, the deep dimension of the Torah, is that depth, or secret, is always because there is an inherent paradox in a certain situation. And to be able to see and come to grips with that paradox, to live, to experience the paradox in the soul, that is the learning and the living in accordance with the Kabbalah and Hasidut. So once more, the word, maybe the most important word in the whole Bible, which represents a paradoxical state of being, is this word chashmal, silence and speech. It's also very similar to the phrase that we find that maybe is much more familiar to us, that the prophet Elijah, Eliyahu Navi, when he went to Har Sinai, there he heard a kol demama daka, this still silent voice, which also implies that there's silence and voice being experienced simultaneously. So that concept of still silent voice and this concept, this word, this paradoxical word, which is the archetype of paradox of chashmal, are related, very closely related to one another. Whenever there are two sides to a paradox, the Kabbalah teaches there must also be a third intermediate level or stage which serves to unify the two antithetical sides of the paradox. So in this particular case of chashmal, of silence and speech, the same word mal, which means speech, also has another meaning in the Torah, a meaning that we're all certainly familiar with. Mal milashon milah, brit milah, circumcision. The same word mal, which is the word here for speech, for articulation, also means in Hebrew circumcision. What does circumcision mean? It means the act of cutting away the foreskin and thereby revealing the crown of the holiness. It's called Gilui HaAtara, which is itself the process of severance, of division between good and evil, between light and darkness, between sweet and bitter. So this is the complementary series which were taught, corresponds to those concepts that we said before, hakna'av dalam taka, silence. The concept of silence and this whole being still and silent, which is a meditative state, as we'll explain now. That silence is the stage, corresponds to the stage of submission. The ability to speak, and that actually light emanates from the mouth, ptach picha v'ya'iru dvarecha. When a person is able to speak properly, according to the Torah, it's as though light comes from the mouth. How do we find this? We see this also in the creation itself, that God is the first words that we find. God himself, the Creator, speaking, Ar yihi or, vayihi or, let there be light, and there was light. Meaning that the very first thing that came out of God's mouth was also light. Let there be light. And that light itself ultimately is so powerful that it sweetens the darkness. It will eventually be able to sweeten the darkness. So once more, speech represents the power, ultimately the power of the soul to sweeten. It's as if a person has a worry, an anxiety. Da'aga belev ish yisichena, v'davar tov yisamchena. You tell your problem to a physician or to an advisor, a counselor, and the good words that you hear in response sweeten your anxiety. Meaning that speech, proper speech, has itself the power to sweeten, which means to heal the anxiety of the soul. Da'aga belev ish yesichena v'davar tov yisamchena is the verse in Proverbs. So once more, silence corresponds to submission, speech corresponds to sweetening, and the intermediate level of mal, which is circumcision, that corresponds to separation. So once more, we have here two models, two sets of concepts. One set is called hachna'a, havdalah hamtaka, submission, separation, sweetening, and the other corresponding parallel set of concepts are called chash, mal, silence, circumcision, speech. Right, so actually now we can look once more at the sheet and see the form, the basic form that we have here in front of us. As we have here three general categories which follow the sequence of hachna'a, havdalah, hamtaka. Right, at the top is hachna'a, which reads once more submission, and then havdalah, which reads separation, and finally hamtaka, which reads sweetening. Now each one of these in itself is divided into three, which is again a great general underlying principle of the Kabbalah. Whenever there is a complete, perfected, or rectified state, all details, just as a hologram, all details must reflect each one in itself the whole series or the whole process of the whole. Because every part reflects all of the parts of the whole. So you always arrive at a square number. In other words, if you begin with 4 concepts, if the 4 concepts are in a rectified state of experience in the soul, actually there are 16 different stages experienced, 4 times 4. Here we have 3. Since we're beginning with 3, so we must, in order to reach a state of rectification, arrive at 9, at 3 times 3, which is 9, which is exactly what we have here in front of us. So here, on the right, in each one of these 3 lines, beneath each of the basic concepts, we have on the far right here, chash mal mal. Instead of using the word hakna'ah, we have here chash mal mal, but after the chash is written hakna'ah sheba hakna'ah, which means the submission within the submission. And then the mal is the havdalah sheba hamtaka, the separation within the submission. And then the final mal is the hamtaka sheba hakna'ah, the sweetening within the submission. Once more, each one of the 3 has to have all of the 3 reflected in it in order to create a perfect and a consummate array of experience in the soul. All right, now what are the basic 3 stages here? What do they mean for us? Now we're going to try to translate these introductory words to our topic at hand, which is meditation and healing. So actually the word meditation here appears in the middle level, which is in general called havdalah, separation. Before one can properly meditate, there have to be certain preparations that the person, the believing Jew, does in order to enter into a state of body and soul which is conducive to meditation. All of those initial preparatory things that we are taught to do, that we'll enumerate in a moment, those all belong to the general realm of maaseh, of deed, of action. Meaning that all of the actions that one does as a preparation to be able to meditate all have to do in general with the submission of the soul. Once more, an action which is a preparatory state to put yourself into a state of being which is conducive, that you're able to concentrate and to meditate properly, and that it's going to have an effect on your psyche. All of those actions that we'll now presently enumerate all belong to the general state of soul that one is lowering himself in order to become ready to meditate. So that's why here we have across the word hakna'ah at the top, we have ma'aseh, that there are 3 stages of deeds which one does in order to prepare himself to be able to meditate purely. Then comes the meditation itself. But the meditation itself, which is in order to achieve in the soul the identification, as we said before, of the light and the goodness, that is in general the level of havdalah, of separation. Whereas the culmination of every meditation, according to the Torah, is the ability to pray. Once more, in general, meditation in our Jewish tradition itself is a second preparatory state before one actually turns to God and faces God and stands in the presence of God and verbally expresses his prayer to God. So what we actually are going now to explain is that there are preparatory actions which we're taught to do, that these come, there are 3 basic things which were already taught from the Arizal and the Baal Shem Tov, the Magid. And then there is the meditation itself. And then finally, the word That's when we said before that the sweetening is the power of the word. But the word of the prayer possesses its potency, its power, completely only after one has meditated, and the meditation itself comes after one has prepared himself properly, has done those 3 acts which are necessary to enter into a state which is worthy of coming to a potent meditation. All right, so what are the three actions or deeds? This appears once more several times, both in the writings of the Arizal and the Hasidus. Even before the Arizal, maybe many of us have heard of the great early Mekubal by the name of Abulafia, Rabbi Avraham Abulafia, in the 13th century. So he, at great length, describes the active preparatory things that a person should do in order to enter into a state which is conducive to meditate. And he talks about purifying oneself and dressing in white and going outside of the city and having some little room to enter into a state of solitude, which is called hitbodedut. And at great length, even describes vis-a-vis in relation to himself, his own personal experiences that he had. But he's very, very strong about having to make the proper preparations. In the later teachings of the Arizal and Hasidut, the 3 basic preparations are these that are listed here in front of us, which are Tevilah b'mikveh tahara, which means dipping oneself, entering into a mikveh, in order to purify the body. And once more, these are active deeds which correspond to the soul's lowering itself, or being mevatel itself. Bitul means nullifying its ego, as we'll try to explain a little bit. First is the tevilah. That is what's written here. I'm now reading the first line in the middle. The first line reads, Tevilah b'mikveh tahara. The dipping into the mikveh of purity, to the holy, pure waters of the mikveh. What does that do to the soul? It says that the word tevilah itself, the dipping into the mikveh, is a permutation of the letters bitul, habitul. The Baal Shem Tov says that before a person goes to the mikveh, he has to think that there is a certain element of his being which is called a kli cheres. It's like a piece of pottery, of earthenware. And earthenware does not become pure upon being immersed into the waters of the mikveh. The only thing you can do with earthenware that has become impure is to break it. So he actually says that level, or that dimension of the soul, which is like the kli cheres, the earthenware, which is the external level of the soul, even before a person actually is like walking down, this is what you're thinking, even before you're walking down the stairs into the water, to immerse oneself into the pure waters, a person has to break in himself, that's called the leiv nishbar, the broken heart, which is actually the true kli, the true complete vessel to receive the blessings of Hashem. There's a famous expression, en kli shalem kelev nishbar. There is no more complete vessel than a broken heart. Since the whole topic that we're discussing today is one of healing, the relation between healing and meditation. Healing means that a person recognizes, and as a person searches for healing, it means because he recognizes it more or less, to a certain extent, he's ill. Something's wrong. Because if you don't feel that you're sick in any way whatsoever, so you don't seek to heal yourself. That very recognition that a person is ill. Why is a person ill? So the bottom line of just feeling that one is not well is for the sake of the submission of the soul. Why does God creates us, as we'll go on to explain, every moment. There's continual recreation. The word to create in Hebrew, bara, is the same as bari, which means to be healthy. It means that every moment we are being recreated, and by being recreated every moment, that means that we're becoming healthy every moment. That God Himself is actively healing us and making us healthy by recreating us every single moment. So for what reason is a person sometimes not well? So clearly the first answer to that is that there's some ego barrier which is separating my psyche from being able to recognize that very truth itself, that God is recreating me this very moment, and thereby making me healthy this very moment, that barrier has to be broken and has to be lowered. Once more, the very first sign, you're supposed to be able, first and foremost, to a little bit read the signposts or the hints of God, the Creator, in your own life. What's happening to you? What's happening to me in my life? So the very first reaction that I must have if I feel not well 100% is that is a clear indication from on high, from heaven, that there's some barrier, some blockage. Just like it says in Hasidut, that illness itself is always because there's some blockage in the flow of the life force in the body, like in the circulatory system, in the blood. If there wouldn't be some blockage, a person would be 100% well all the time. So just like illness always has to do with some inner blockage in the system, whether it's some physical blockage, like say in the blood system, or some psychological blockage in the flow of the psyche, the true blockage is some barrier between me and my ability to recognize God and the process of continual recreation, which is the experience of God making me healthy. Rofecho basar umaflila asod, as we say many, many times a day, that God is the healer of all flesh, and He wondrously acts upon me every single moment. So once more, if a person is ill, the very first immediate reaction of the soul is to lower oneself. So now let's get back to the mikveh. Before a person can even immerse into the waters, the pure waters of the mikveh, you have to realize that there's some impure kli cheres. That's what the Baal Shem Tov says. Some earthenware, the most external part of his body and psyche, that has to be broken. But that breaking itself produces a kli shalem. There's no more complete vessel than a broken heart. And with that broken heart, he immerses into the waters of the mikveh. And in the waters themselves of the mikveh, he enters into a true state of bitul amiti. And this is the reason that, once more, it says that the word tevilah, to immerse in the waters, is a permutation of the word bitul, which is a general state of being null and experience that I am nothing in the presence of God. And even more so, it says that in the waters of the mikveh one feels as though he's returned to the womb. The waters of the mikveh are like the Mei Shapir, the waters that surround the fetus in the womb, in the uterus. So that also, the state of the fetus in the womb itself, is one of no self-consciousness. Just entering into a general state of bitul klali, that there is no individual self-consciousness. Right, this is once more, this is an action that one does. When one now comes out of the mikveh, the next thing to do, once more, this is what we're taught in the writings of the Kabbalah and Hasidut, is that a person has to learn each one in accordance with his ability and his level of comprehension to actually learn in the Torah, not just in the Torah in general, but in the deeper parts of the Torah. In the Kabbalah or Chassidut, what is called Pnimiut Torah, the soul of the Torah, to learn something. Once more, Kol Chada B'Chada Lefum Shiura Delay, to learn something in the Nishmeta D'Oraita, the soul of the Torah. Now what does that do? That creates in the soul a general state of connection to the soul root. Once more, the dipping or the immersion in the waters of the mikveh, that produces in the soul a general state of self-nullification. Then, when one takes a book, say the Zohar, sometimes it says you should take a Zohar or take any other book of the inner dimension, the inner light of the Torah. And when one learns even a little bit of Pnimiut Torah, that is not just for the sake of the understanding of what you're learning. It has a much deeper effect than just the reading and the learning and the understanding itself. It's a connection, it's an identity. That one becomes connected now and to a certain extent aware of his soul root. So that's separation within the preparation, which in general is submission. Once more, the submission of the submission is the general state of self-nullification that should happen if a person has first broken his heart, even before he walks down the stairs into the water, and then enters into the water of the mikveh. Once more, just like returning to the womb and becoming null in general. That is the submission of the submission. Then when one comes out and each one learns a drop of the inner soul of the Torah, that creates the separation in the general state of the submission, which once more means the experience of being connected. For instance, if a person is a chosid of a Rabbi, so he would probably learn something from that Rabbi that he's connected to. And the learning is not just, once more, the understanding, the intellectual comprehension of what he's learning, but it itself is the expression of his connecting his mind. And it's not just that I'm understanding something, but my mind is being connected to the mind that said and wrote those words. So what's really happening is, once more, is lifting me up and away and out of my own self-confinedness, my own limited experience, and connecting me to something higher. That something higher is either the soul of the Rabbi or it's the source of my own soul. As it is in, once more, everybody can experience the source of his own soul especially in the deeper teachings of the Torah, which are intended to be relevant to each and every Jew, especially in our later generations, that there is no Jew, no matter in what state that he is, that is not shayach, not relevant, not capable here and now of relating to the deeper dimensions of the Torah. As everybody can learn Kabbalah, just you have to learn it properly. But it's intended to be for all. Right, then comes the stage number 3 of the Hachna'ah. These are three. Even the learning now is considered to be an action. It's not part of the meditation yet. Obviously, if a person doesn't learn, doesn't know anything what to think of, he can't meditate. But here the learning, as one of these 3 stages of action before one really begins to meditate, is considered here to be doing something. Just like we know that learning Torah itself is a mitzvah ma'asit. It's one of the actual commandments of the Torah. So here also it's taken to be an action. And the action of the learning is that you're connecting yourself to a higher source, which is really your own higher source. The third action, which it says that you can't begin to do any potent activity. And here we're discussing meditation and healing before a person expresses his goodness to someone else, to the other. So therefore it says that the third action that a person has to do is called netinat tzedakah, is to give tzedakah. Once more, each one in accordance with his ability. Very often, even in the Gemara itself, we find that the sages before prayer would give tzedakah. What is the reason that you give tzedakah before prayer? It's not just to perform that commandment itself, which is the greatest active commandment of Kol HaTorah Kula, but in particular, that giving of tzedakah is a skula. But in this context, the giving of tzedakah is the skula that I enlivened. I am giving life to someone else. So just as I am giving life to someone else, so does Hashem give me life. Kol ha-merachem ala briot merachamim alav min hashamayim. But the experience of myself sweetening, by giving tzedakah, I am sweetening somebody else's existence. And to the extent that I am able to sweeten it, Hashem has given me the ability to give, to help somebody else, to give charity. Of course, the greatest charity is actually to be able to do a favor, an actual physical favor to someone. That's why many sages and great people used to even run physically to do acts of loving kindness before prayer. Because to the extent that the person is able to give life to someone else, so does he receive life, spiritual life. To the extent that you're able to give physical life to someone else, so does God immediately reward you with spiritual life in your own soul and body. So once more, in order to what does life mean? Life in Hebrew is called chayus. Chayus means that a person feels alive, feels enthusiasm. When he's davening, when he's praying, when even in the meditation, that a person, it's not by the way, that you're full of life, full of enthusiasm. That is a gift. That enthusiasm itself is a gift from heaven. And that gift from heaven comes to a person that does acts of kindness and charity to others. So once more, that third stage of netinat tzedakah, of giving tzedakah, is giving life to someone else and thereby becoming a vessel to receive life, not just physical life, but spiritual life, which once more means enthusiasm, chayus, in one's divine service. So that is called the hamtaka of the hakna'ah, or the mal, milashon milul, the speech of the silence. Once more, the hamtaka, the sweetening of the submission, is identical with the speech entailed within the silence itself. All right, so these were three preparatory stages. After these three preparatory stages were all called action and hakna, now one comes to the separation itself, or the experience of light, which is the meditative process itself. So in general, in meditation, especially, which has an orientation towards healing. Like, not all meditation must necessarily be healing oriented. But the topic that we're discussing today is healing oriented meditation. Which means it's very important to understand that not all meditation must necessarily have this conscious orientation towards healing. But that's the topic that we're now discussing this afternoon. So in this healing-oriented meditation, let's maybe now make another very important point, that just as in prayer, the same is true as meditation. When a person prays, he should never just pray for himself. But even if a person actually has an ailment or some other problem, but any physical or spiritual problem that a person has and that he prays, there are two basic thoughts that a person has to have. The first thought is what we said before, that any problem is, first of all, because there's some blockage or barrier between myself and my Creator, and that barrier has to be taken down. And that's basically through the submission of the soul. The second thing is, there's also a general principle that any problem that I have is a divine hint to me that my soul is capable of praying for this problem to be solved, not just for myself, but for the whole Jewish people, or for the whole world. To try to understand that my problem is a symptom of some much greater problem that exists throughout the world, especially throughout our Jewish world, but the whole universe, the whole world at large as well, and that God has actually given me this problem just in order to recognize that this is a symptom of something much more general, and He wants me, and I would only be aroused to pray because I have, unfortunately, this symptom, but He wants me, by possessing this symptom, to recognize that this is a general problem and to pray for everyone. And when I am able to actually see that this is a general problem and pray for the Klal, for Klal Yisrael, that is the most sure way also to heal myself. But obviously the prayer has to be 100% sincere, that it's not just for myself, it's just understanding that my problem is a symptom of everyone, of a much greater general problem. Not just of the Jewish people, but even more generally the concept of the Shekhinah, the divine presence of God, Kivyachol, itself is in exile and is suffering together with the Jewish people. V'chol tzaratam lo tzar. So ultimately my prayers are for the sake of God's own divine presence. So the same is true of hitbonenut, that if we're talking here about healing-oriented meditation, it's once more very important that the meditation is not just to heal myself, that I was given this problem in order to meditate and try to understand that this once more reflects some general problem that has to be healed. And if maybe through the help of my own meditation, it will be to a certain extent healed. And then when I go on after the meditation to pray, once more I have to pray for the klal, not just for my own individual self. All right, now in meditation, this healing-oriented meditation, there are three stages, once more, which correspond to the hachna'ah and the havdalah and the hamtaka within the havdalah. Now I'm reading these three. The first meditation, which is taught throughout the classic works of Chassidut and Kabbalah, is simply to meditate on the infinity of God versus the finitude and the nothingness of man, are called the Shiflut HaAdam v'Romemut Kel. How exalted and infinite is God the Creator, and how small and nothing am I, man. My body and my problems. How little. What does this serve to do? It serves to a tremendously great extent, serve first of all to even diminish my own problem. Because even I myself, the first meditation is that I myself am a little nothing versus the universe, versus the creator of the universe. So once more, the first general meditation is obviously thought-based. There has to be thought to meditation. The Jewish meditation is never meant to be something which is not based upon thought. The first thought is a general thought, which was once more called the shifluta adam, the lowliness or nothingness of man, in face of the exaltedness, this is the expression, Romamutkel, the exaltedness and infinity of God. Now, nonetheless, even though I'm a little nothing, just as we find in Psalms number 8, that it says, lift up your eyes to the heavens and see the stars and the constellations. Ma Adam, what is man that you should know him? And this is a tremendous, important experience of the soul. And even we find lahavdil amongst non-Jewish great poets and authors that also were very much aroused by this phrase in Psalm 8 of looking up to the heavens and seeing how great and infinite is God's creation, and how nothing and small and seemingly insignificant is this little being called man, myself. What does that produce in the soul? Besides the very pshat, this literal experience of the universe being infinite and the creator of the universe being the infinite of the infinite, and man being a little nothing. What it actually produces in the Jewish soul is faith and trust. Because even though I'm nothing, I'm very, very small and God is very, very big, but He is not removed from me and from us. As other peoples, lahavdil, of the earth, may think that because God, the Creator, is infinite and man is insignificant and nothing, so there's no relation whatsoever between the two. That He has removed Himself. Azav Hashem et haaretz. He's left the earth because it's too small for Him. It's too insignificant for Him. The Jewish soul reacts to this experience the very opposite. That how small I am and how great He is, how much more is the wonder that He looks over me with His providence and takes care of the very most minute detail of my day-to-day existence in life. And the more one thinks of this, of how insignificant I am and how great He is, the Creator, one comes to deeper and deeper faith and bitachon, trust, faith and trust in the Creator. This is what happens to the Jewish soul. And this is always the first stage of meditation. So here, that's what we have written here. That the meditation itself is on shifluta adam v'romamut kel. And what it augments in the soul is emunan bitachon. Now this is called the hachna'ah of the Havdalah. Because in general, the meditation itself is a submissive meditation. That man is not small and nothing, and God is great. So this is the submission within the general process of meditation, which is in our three-stage general array here, the level of Havdalah, of separation. It's the hachna'ah sheba Havdalah, the chash, the silence, once more, looking up at the heavens, and seeing the stars, and ma Adam, what is this little man that you should know him? That is the silence. When one sees infinity and how little and small I am, one can just remain silent. It's the silence of the meditation. But in that silence itself, one comes to great faith and trust in the Creator. Once more, this is what happens to the Jewish soul, because one is aware that the greater God is and the smaller I am, the more wondrous is the fact that nonetheless He is always looking over me to the very minutest detail of my day-to-day life. All right, the next stage is what we said before, that a person, and we're taught in Chasilut that every single Jew in his soul has the ability to experience, not just to believe in, but to actually know, by direct perception, the truth that the world and myself as a part of the world am being recreated anew every split second, right here and now. And this is the ultimate flow of health, as we said before, that Bri'ah, creation, means health, Briut. Once more, a person is able, should be able to either close his eyes or open his eyes and actually experience some type of an in and out dynamic of all reality in one split second, vanishing and coming back anew. Just like if a person would be seeing a film. The film has little pieces of pictures, but since the pictures are flowing at a very fast speed, faster than the normal eye can catch, so one sees a continuum, one sees what appears to be a continuum of an ongoing process, some story happening. But if one could catch the nothing between each picture, there's a little piece of film which has nothing on it. The nothings between the pictures, that would be experiencing, as it were, the world being recreated, something from nothing every second. So it's just a question of how one's spiritual eyesight is tuned in. Just before we heard that 2 days from now, Yutet Kislev is going to be the Chag HaGeulah of the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad. At the end of his life, he actually said to his grandson, the Tzemach Tzedek, that believe me, that right now I am not seeing when I look, and even lying in bed and looking at the ceiling. I don't see the ceiling. I see just the nothing, the divine nothing that is bringing the ceiling into creation every split second. So once more, that was a very, very great tzaddik, also at the epitome of his life, the end of his life. But it says, once more, that this is not something which is reserved for the few and select souls. But to a certain extent, every single Jewish soul has the ability to experience recreation. Once more, one has to be pure. One has to have gone through the stages before. The previous state of meditation was just to recognize the smallness of man and the greatness of God. That is not yet, once more, that's looking up at the creation itself, looking up at the heavens, the stars, and so forth, and seeing how great is the creator of all of this, and how small am I, this little man here on the face of the earth. A little chardal seed is the expression, a mustard seed. But it's not yet experienced the fact that everything is being recreated every moment. The second stage of meditation is this meditation upon the recreation. Now, what does that give to the soul? Just as we said before, that the meditation of Shiflut HaAdam v'Romut Kel gives the soul a greater sense of emunah and bitachon. And is also necessary for healing. Let's go back now to the topic which is healing. The most important thing to be healed is that a person that believes in God and has trust in God, that he will be healed. Tracht gut wird sein gut. Because if a person wants to be healed through meditation, he has to believe in God the healer. And he has to, what's called nowadays, have positive thinking. The whole concept of positive thinking is actually a famous expression of the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rabbi of Chabad, Tracht gut wird sein gut, that maybe many of us have heard this expression. Think good, it will be good. So that very ability to think positively and think good and to be able to a certain extent to visualize oneself as well and sound and healthy, that is a result of the first submissive stage of the meditation. And that's obviously ultimately necessary in order that the meditation really heals. Now what comes after that? After that emunah bitachon and the ability, once more, the strengthening in the soul, its power to think positively, which is itself because of the fact of how small is man and how great is God. Which is so simple, as we said before, this is something that is not, to a certain extent, this level of meditation is not even reserved to a Jew. It's just a question of what the result of it is in the soul. But the experience itself is a universal experience. It's not just a Jewish experience of how small is man and how great is the creator of the universe. But then comes the next thing, which is already particularly a Jewish ability of the soul to experience recreation. Now what does that produce? In addition to the emunah and bitachon of tracht gut v'tzayin gut, that think positively, you'll be well. See yourself well and think that you'll be well, because not just see yourself well. Again, what is the difference between Jewish positive thinking and, say, lahavdil? This whole level here is havdalah, which is like the term lahavdil. The difference between Jewish positive thinking, this concept of positive thinking, and, say, non-Jewish positive thinking. So basically, non-Jewish positive thinking would just be visualize yourself as being well and sound, and that will make an effect on the soul. You will be well and sound. If it's Jewish, it has to be connected to God. It's not just that I see myself strong, and I'll be strong. Just the opposite. It begins here from seeing oneself insignificantly small and nothing, and God infinitely great and exalted. But that gives a sense of trust that this great God is looking after me, and that trust is the basis of the positive thinking. The thinkers, for sure God will heal me and make me well and sound. I'm 100% sure that God is on my side and is looking after me and will heal me. That's Jewish positive thinking. And that will help. That's necessary. That's stage number one. Stage number two, once more, is the world and myself as part of the world and being now created. I mean, to a certain extent, what does continual recreation imply? It implies that I am not totally under the influence of the past. Momentary recreation means that every second is a new beginning, a hatchala chadasha. That what was needn't necessarily influence, and certainly not in a fatalistic, deterministic way, determine my present and my future. But that every second is a new beginning. Because God is creating me anew. I know, as we said before, when a child is created, he's born in general. He's intended any new creation is meant to be 100% well. Things become non-well usually because of bad things that a person does to his own life. But if we see, unfortunately, that sometimes children are also born not well, that has to do with either bad things that the parents did or with previous gilgulim, all kinds of metaphysical things that we cannot know in general. But if there is a new, fresh slate, like a new creation altogether, Bereshit bara Elokim, when God created the world, He created Olam al Milu'o Nivra, He created it healthy and complete. Before the primordial sin of man, everything was 100% well and sound. Vayar Elokim et kol asher asa v'hinei tov mo'od. Hashem saw everything that He had now just created, and it was all very good, 100% good. So once more, if I don't enter into the picture and do something wrong, then the creation coming from God is certainly 100% well, and it's beginning over again. I'm getting a new chance, a new beginning every single second. In Sefer Yetzirah, we're taught that the world has 3 dimensions, not what we call the 3 dimensions, but all of our 3 physical dimensions are just one dimension of Sefer Yetzirah, called the spatial dimension of reality. Then there is the temporal, the time dimension, which is called Shana, and the third is the soul dimension. That the soul dimension is the coordinate whose 2 infinite points are Omek Tov and Omek Ra, the depth of good and the depth of evil. The time coordinate, its 2 infinite points are Omek Reshit and Omek Acharit, the depth of the beginning and the depth of the end. And then there are 3 spatial coordinates, which are all under the category which is called Olam. With the 4 directions, or the 4 infinite points of the 2 coordinates. And then there's a third coordinate which is up and down that has Omek Rum and Omek Tachat as its 2 infinite points. The depth of on high and the depth of below. The 3 concepts are called Olam Shana Nefesh. The spatial coordinates are called Olam, the universe, the world. The time coordinate is called Shana, the year. Because the time coordinate also appears as a cycle, an annual cycle. It's called the year. And the spiritual coordinate of reality is Nefesh, the soul. In the Zohar we find a very basic statement which reads, Let atar panui minei. There is no place vacant of Him. It means that God's presence is omnipresent in every single point of reality. Now, as taught in Chasidout, every single point of reality means in all of these 3 dimensions of Olam Shana Nefesh, of space, time, and soul. Continuous recreation, that meditation upon continuous recreation, produces in the soul the ability to recognize that truth of let atar panui minei, that there is no space, no point, not just of space, of physical space, no point of all of these 3 coordinates, these 3 dimensions of reality of Olam Shana Nefesh, which is vacant of the very being of Hashem's omnipresence. Meaning that God is totally with me, here and now, in every state. The third of those dimensions, which is called the soul dimension, means that every psychological state of being, God is in. Just before, at the entrance, somebody asked me about dreams. So a dream can be a vain. As Chazal say that Chalomot shav yedaberu, that dreams in general are vain, even though now is the time, this month of Kislev is the month that we read about all of the true dreams in the Torah. That's why the very chush, every month of the year has a certain chush to it, a certain sense. And the sense of this month has to do with dreams, of this very month that we're in Kislev, because all of the true dreams in the Torah of Yaakov Avinu and Yosef HaTzadik, and even Paro Melech Mitzrayim, we all read of those dreams in this month. And they all came true. But in general, dreams are in vain. There are all kinds of other states that are in vain. If a person has fears, or before we're talking about anxiety, we'll talk about fears, especially if a person is not well, they can have fears of his illness. In general, all of those fears are also like vain dreams. So almost like some type of, on the verge of some psychological paranoia that almost every individual has, that is afraid and anxious. And also has all kinds of experience which seemingly is non-real experiences. To say that God is omnipresent, is true, God's essence is omnipresent, means that even an experience which is vain, which is seemingly non-true and non-real, also could not be even bad thoughts that a person has. It's called machshavot zarot. You couldn't have any thought, you couldn't be in any state of being. Let's say a person is in a bad psychological state, which is certainly in a confused state. Certainly it's a non-real state. He shouldn't be there. But a person in meditation has to be able to experience that in my present state of being, my present psychological state of being, which is called my state of nefesh, and my present physical state of being, God is there. And God is actually creating it. If God wouldn't be there, it wouldn't be at all. Even if it appears to be bad and even non-real, like a vain dream. God is also in that dream, no matter what it is. Once more, nothing could be, no state of soul could be if God would not be there. Once more, this is the result of the second stage of meditation. That due to the fact that everything is being recreated every single split second, that means that God is omnipresent and God is good, and He's omnipresent in every single dimension of reality, whether it's the physical, spatial reality or the temporal reality of time or the psychological reality of the soul. Every different psychological place that a person is in is called an atar. But you're in a certain place. Where are you? Like after Adam sinned, God approached him and he said, Ayeka, where are you? He didn't mean physically, where are you? He meant, where have you fallen to? What state of being are you in? Where have you come to? Ayeka. So it means that every place, even if a person himself has sinned and fallen into a certain non-real state of being, that is called a place. You're in a certain place. And the Zohar says once more, let atar panui minei. There's no place that is vacant of Him. So once more, to be healed, you have to know that va'atzia sho'ol hineka, that even if a person has fallen into the pit, even into the grave, the sho'ol, tachtit, hineka, here you are, here is God. That is stage number 2 of meditation. Let atar panui minei, which derives from the ability to experience continual recreation. And once more, continual recreation implies as well every moment anew. The negation of any deterministic mode of thought. Right now, this second stage we call havdalah sheba-havdalah. This is the essence of separating oneself from the mundane mentality that a person has towards the world and towards reality. The true separation, becoming separate from the false attitude towards reality, is when one becomes aware of the fact that the past does not determine the present, but that God is recreating every second the whole world, and especially myself. Now, the third stage, which is called the hamtaka sheba havdalah, the sweetening, this is really the thing that maybe many of the people wanted to hear about the most, which is now the ability to bring down that light of God, which is omnipresent, and to relate it in particular to the malfunctionings, which are the illnesses of my body, in order to heal them. It's just like as a laser ray of light, to now be able to take this light and direct it at the particular problems that I am suffering, or that the Jewish people are suffering, or that the world is suffering. And by shining that light directly at these problems, at each problem individually, one is able to sweeten and to heal the ailment. That is stage number 3. Now that stage number 3 is called in Kabbalah becoming a merkava. The term that we mentioned before, the chariot of Yechezkel. The chariot of Yechezkel means that the physical body of the tzaddik, va'amech kulam tzaddikim. Whenever we have this 3-stage process of first hachna'ah, and then havdalah, and then hamdaka, so at the first level of hachna'ah, of submission, a person actually relates to himself as though he is at present in any event. I'm the opposite of a tzaddik. I'm even like a rasha. I just want to do tshuva. The intermediate level is always a state which is called the Beinoni. As we said before, that every single Jew has the ability to experience recreation. When I say that this is true of every Jew, that is called in the terminology of Tanya the level of the Beinoni of Tanya. It's an intermediate state. But now comes a level which is truly a level of tzaddikim, of the righteous souls, that initially not everybody can achieve and attain this level. But the more that we proceed towards the ultimate redemption of Mashiach, which is, we feel, imminent in our generation, and as taught by all the great tzaddikim of the last several generations, every Jew is becoming closer and closer. Also, every single Jew, even though on the surface he might appear to be very, very far away and removed from a tzaddik, but the potential that every soul has to be a tzaddik is becoming closer and closer to the reality. And it's very, very easy, if one just desires, in truth, to attain levels which in previous generations were reserved for the few and select, for the tzaddikim. But in the future, when Mashiach will come, va'amech kulam tzaddikim, all of the Jewish people will be at the level of tzaddikim. So once more, to be a merkava, this is explained in Tanya, to be yourself, oneself a chariot, means that one experiences individually in every single limb of the body, every motion of the body, every breath that one breathes, one has an individual divine experience, as though divinity is actually being experienced in my own body. In every single cell, and every single motion and organ and function of my body, there is an experience of divinity. That Hashem is doing it. Hashem is here. And that is the true ray, the radiation of divine light into the body that actually heals ailments. Once more, this is called the experience of becoming a chariot. A chariot means that that the body itself is null to the rider on the chariot, which is the creator of God, the creator Hashem, and his light is permeating every function of the body in a way which is experienced. The truth is, of course, that for all of us, God is everywhere, we said, and so certainly God is in the body. But as an experience of light, one senses this divine radiation entering into every single limb of the body. In many sidurim, prayer books, which are based upon Kabbalah, at the beginning, there's a very simple meditation which is given to become a merkava, which is the meditation simply of connecting the limbs of one's body to the sfirot above. That the verse says, "Mibsari echazeh Eloka," from my flesh I envision God. And God creates the world through 10 emanations, 10 lights, 10 sfirot. And those sfirot are reflected in my psyche, in my soul, and also in my body. This experience of becoming a Merkava chariot, this meditation, which is called the meditation of oneself being a chariot, is just like Adam when he was first created before the primordial sin, that he was created in the divine image of God. That divine image, B'tzelem u'dmut Elokim, does not just refer to the spiritual dimension of man, but it includes as well the physical body of man. That the physical body of man is also called Tzelem Elokim. And to experience that there is a direct reflection of divinity even in the physical limbs, in every function, in all the relationships and the proportions, even the size, the ratios between the limbs are all reflective of divine principles. It's all a divine aesthetic, even the beauty of the body. The physical, even the physical beauty of a body, of a human body, this is a divine state. This experience or this meditation is called Ma'aseh Merkava. Now, what we have here, written here, this the third line in the second section. In the middle is written Merkava b'guf u'panefesh, that the body and the soul both are chariots, are divine chariots. Now, on the left is written that this, in particular, this is done through the meditation upon the Sfirot. There are 10 emanations, and they are reflected in the body. We'll talk first about the body. They're reflected as the various limbs of the body. And the right brain is the wisdom, the left brain is the understanding. Whereas here, we weren't able to make enough of these to give it out to everyone. But there are about 10. I don't know how they'll be distributed, of a little, like regular pamphlet of different charts, of 9 different charts that relate to healing, of which several of them are to understand the Sfirot, the 10 Sfirot, how they correspond to the limbs of the body. Also how the 10 Sfirot corresponds not just to the limbs of the body, but to the systems of the body. There's all kinds of systems. There's the respiratory system, the circulatory system, the nervous system, the endocrine system, the immune system. There's also in Kabbalah a one-to-one correspondence between the various physiological systems and the Sfirot. So once more, if a person is suffering from a certain system, let's say the immune system, so he has to shine light at the Sfirah of Hod, which again we don't now have the time to do this in great detail. Actually, the reason that I picked the immune system is because in this day and age, in our generation, this is maybe physiologically the most problematic and the vulnerable system of the body, which most modern diseases have to do with problems of the immune system. So in Kabbalah, this, for instance, corresponds to Hod. Hod is the left foot. Hod means the ability of the soul to acknowledge. It has to do with conviction and with sincerity of the soul, with simplicity. There's many things called tmimut in the soul. So these are things, first of all, to think of, things to work on, not just to meditate about, but to work on in one's life. But first of all, to meditate. And the ability of the meditation to be able to connect to the Sfirah of Hod, and to the limb that it represents in the body, and to the system that it represents, like you were talking about the immune system as an example. That's part of this third level, which is Hamtaka Shebehavdalah, of a meditation which is a chariot-oriented. This is called all such types of meditations which make divine light correspond one-to-one to different parts of the body and soul, have to do with the chariot, the Merkava. So one thing is to is to know the secrets of the 10 Sfirot and how they relate to the body. The next that we have written here, after the word Sfirot, are Otiot. There are 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. But there are 10 Sfirot and 22 letters. When the 10 Sfirot are expanded, they actually become 13. Also something we can't now explain. But the Sfirot are initially 10, and in an expanded form they are 13. Then there are 22 letters. For the 22 letters also, we have here in this, one of the pages in this little booklet are how the 22 letters correspond one-to-one to the limbs of the body. The way Sefer Yetzirah enumerates and divides the letters of the alphabet into 3 categories of 3, 7, and 12. The 3 are general categories called the chest and the head and the abdomen. And then the 7 have to do with the 7 portals of the face. And the 12 have to do with 12 limbs of the body. Inner limbs, inner organs, most of them. So this is another important thing. This also has to do with breathing process in Kabbalah, as taught in the early Kabbalah. Again, something I can't get into, but in breathing, in meditation, which involves breathing techniques, one, as it were, breathes letters from the air, from the atmosphere. Let's say I breathe, let's take the first letter of the alphabet, the Aleph. One actually breathes it into the soul or into the body and refines it, just like you take a precious stone out of the ground and you have to polish it and refine it. There are unrefined letters in the air, in the atmosphere. And the breathing process is a process of breathing them in, and then like hewing the stone from the ground, from the earth, and then it goes through a refining process in the mind, and then is directed to a specific organ of the body. That is called the meditation upon the 22 letters of the alphabet. That's called Otiot, the next word here. Then there is a third meditation, which is maybe the deepest, which has to do with the 15 contact points that go down the central line of the spine, so to speak, of the body. Once more, these we say in our prayers after Kriyat Shema every day. There's a prayer which reads, just when we conclude, Hashem Elokeichem Emet, Hashem is true, then we say Emet v'yatziv v'nachon v'kayam. And there are 15 words there, each one begins with a Vav. In the Kabbalah, those 15 consecutive words which begin with a Vav are from the top of the skull all the way down to the Brit Kodesh, 15 points down the center of the body, which are contact points as they were, are called Yesodot, connective points between the soul and its spiritual life source. So this is also a very, very important meditation of this nature, the nature of a meditation which is Merkava oriented. Once more, which is relating divine lights to the body and to organs and functions of the body. And from the body to the soul, of course. So once more, we have here then 3 different categories of this. One is based on the Sfirot. The Sfirot are 10 or 13, the 10 emanations through which God created the world. They appear as 10 parts of the body. They also appear as 10 different systems of the body. Then the next is the meditation upon the letters, which has to do with breathing especially. The 22 letters. And once more, each one goes to a different part of the body. And then the third is called the meditation upon the 15 contact points. We call them chakra points, but they're not 7, there are 15 of them that go down from the top of the skull to the Brit. And once more, these are the secrets of the 15 words that we say after Emet, Hashem Elokeichem Emet, V'yatziv Nachon V'kayam, and so forth. that run down the center of the body, and each one is a vav, a point of contact, of making contact and connection to one's life source. And they all have to be opened. In the meditation, one has to open up all of these 15 points in order to create the channels of life force coming from its origin into the body and soul. So once more, all of these, this is all a Merkava meditation. Now, we spent time talking before that this type of a meditation cannot really be true and work if it's not preceded by the previous stages of meditation, which are much more general levels of meditation. And just to include in very short, then come 3 different levels of prayer. And the 3 different levels of prayer are: first, know before who you stand. That in prayer, a person has to stand like a slave in front of the king. It means to actually be standing in the presence, face to face to God. That's the first level of prayer. Then there are individual kavanot, intentions of every single word and verse that we say in our prayers. When one learns Kabbalah, each word and each phrase has its kavanot to it. The pnimiyut of each kavanah is that I am praying to God's essence, and even though there are individual meanings which have to do with the sfirot and the flow of energy down from God into the world, that my prayer is directed to His absolute essence. It's called a lav velo lemidotav. This is the consciousness that I have to have when thinking of what the words mean. Once more, I'm saying words. The words have meaning. They have literate meaning, literal meaning, and they have Kabbalistic, deep meaning, secrets. But beyond all of the meaning that the words have, and obviously the meaning is important, that's what I'm praying for. I'm praying for what I'm saying. But I have to experience that the prayer is being directed at the very, very essence of God. That's called Elav Velo Mirotav. And all of the actual meanings of the words and the requests that I'm praying for are all the channels of the flow descending from God into reality. That my upward thrust, once more, the prayer, first I have to be standing as a slave before the king in total nullification. Then I shoot the idiom, the metaphor is I shoot arrows. The prayers are like shooting arrows. And the arrows are directed at God's essence. Then what happens, if it hits, if God makes it hit, then it produces a downward flow of energy. And that downward flow of energy is coming through the meanings of the words. Which actually means that the meaning of what I'm saying is just the channels of the downward flow. But the upward thrust of the prayer is directed at God's absolute essence. And then the third is simply the word of the word. Once more, the first is called the submission of the word. The submission of the word of the prayer is the standing before God. The separation of the prayer is the intention to Hashem's essence and no other, en od milvado. But the word of the word, which is the hamtaka sheba hamtaka, is called hishtapchut hanefesh, is the outpouring of the soul. Simply the word, the tfilat kol peh, that this is something that happens only when the mouth opens, not just in the heart. That my mouth opens and my soul pours out. That's the ultimate hamtaka sheba hamtaka in prayer. That if that happens, one can be, Be'ezrat Hashem, assured that the prayer is heard and will be answered for the good. So Hashem help that all of our prayers be answered. Now we'll try to do the prayer, the mincha prayer, and Hashem should hear all of our prayers and bring us the Gula Amitit Vashlema.